The Supreme Court could destroy the internet next week. Thank God. It was a good experiment, but it's over now.
This case has the potential to end the internet as we know it. The internet flourishes on user-generated content. It's the backbone of the internet. And if you write or say something that is illegal, you can be held liable for what you said.
Yep.
But usually the websites that host your content are not liable. And when you hear about Section 230, this is usually what we're talking about. But if websites were also liable for what users say,
that is going to be a bad one.
Websites would either shut down almost everything or police things so tightly that there would be basically nothing even remotely objectionable.
Yeah.
Because if there's one thing that websites hate, it's being on the hook for billions and billions of dollars of potential liability and attorneys.
And this is why, again, I think that YouTube doesn't moderate their website very well. I think that they intentionally do not do it to not give evidence that they are a publisher rather than a platform.
And this isn't just some potential hypothetical. In the past, when laws made websites liable for user content, they just shut down the content and never came back.
Remember the Gawker whenever Hulk Hogan sued him? By the way, W's for that. Gawker was a piece of shit website. That's what they get. But that's what happened.
And one case before the Supreme Court this term seeks to do exactly that, but for all of the internet.
Hulkmania,
no joke.
Yeah, that's
this
right.
This has the potential to end the internet as we know it today. So how did we get here?
How did I get here?
Well, it started with a tragedy. Noemi Gonzalez was a design major at California State University, Long Beach, who was spending a semester studying in Paris. On the evening of November 15th, 2015, she was dining with friends at a cafe on the Champs-Élysées when an ISIS terrorist with a gun opened fire. Gonzalez was killed along with 130 other people in coordinated attacks at 6 locations across the city. ISIS claimed responsibility for the attacks, and eventually 20 men were convicted of crimes related to the massacre. The lone surviving gunman was sentenced to life without parole. So, was justice served? Well, the Gonzalez family contends that it was not, because there was another perpetrator still at large, YouTube. The family sued Google, which owns YouTube, alleging that YouTube's algorithms amplify violent videos and hateful content, despite the company's to limit their reach.
Does YouTube push that stuff? Yeah, I mean, I could see sometimes they would do that. No, because, like, I agree that ultimately they're not responsible. I don't think that YouTube is responsible for this. But I do think that there should be some oversight. Because think about it like this. Can we all agree that negative and highly controversial content is more appealing? And it will generate more engagement and more interactions. Yes. So we can all agree on that. So then, if YouTube and Google is operating in its own best interest, it will promote and distribute ISIS content. That's the truth. So I'm not saying that YouTube and Google are doing that, but I'm saying that it is not as simple as just a what the fuck no.
The Gonzalez family says that YouTube...
And by the way, I don't even think this would matter, because, like, you know why they're not doing this to TikTok? Because TikTok is in fucking China. That's the thing. So it doesn't make a difference.
Recommendations expose people to hateful content, radicalize viewers, and encourage them to make terrorist attacks of their own. Google argued that because ISIS, not YouTube, made and uploaded those videos, YouTube was not the provider or developer of those videos, and therefore it was immune from liability under 47 U.S.C. Section 230, otherwise known as Section 230 of the Communications Decency.
So I guess what it would all depend on is if they could prove that YouTube boosted those videos with the algorithm, and then prove that because of that, YouTube was responsible. I guess. I don't know.
230 of the CDA immunizes internet services for the content that its users upload, and often allows websites to remove content without taking on liability. But the Gonzalez plaintiffs contend that YouTube's recommendations should not be covered by Section 230 because the company is acting like a content creator rather than a publisher. The Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals held that the Gonzalez claims fell...
I don't know. I don't really, like... Because, so... I think the user would also be operating as a content creator if you look at it in an abstract way. because the user is creating the data that the algorithm uses to feed them the recommended videos. So the website is processing the data, but the user is actually creating the data that is being processed. So both. Yeah, I think it's both, if anything.
Well, within Section 230, and Google was immune from suit. The Gonzalez parties appealed, and the Supreme Court granted cert to answer the question of whether Section 230 immunizes an interactive computer service from liability for recommending other party content. Now, in support of their claims, plaintiffs allege that, quote, 2 of the 12 ISIS terrorists who carried out the attacks used online social media platforms to post links to ISIS recruitment YouTube videos and, quote, jihadi YouTube videos.
I still don't think that that means that they were radicalized by YouTube, though, because what this says is that they used the platforms to post the links. Posting the links would have implied that they already had them. So if you're using the argument that YouTube was radicalizing them, then how could they be radicalized if they were already being posted in the first place? It doesn't logically make sense. It's like the cart before the horse. They're already uploading the videos that are radical, so how did YouTube radicalize them if their usage of YouTube was uploading?
One of the men who fired at Gonzalez had appeared in an ISIS recruiting video in 2014. Now, the plaintiffs argue that the defendants violated the...
And I think also somebody makes another really good point here. I actually want to look at this. By that logic, not just the internet, but the entire media. Yeah, this is a very interesting question. Is that should Rolling Stone, for example, be held liable for future mass murders because they put that one kid from the Boston bombing on their front page? Here, I want to make sure you guys see this here. Just so you guys know what I'm talking about, and you see what this is. So this was back in, like, I think it was like 2010 or something like that. So basically, this guy right here was the Boston bomber, and Rolling Stone put him on the front cover of their magazine. And a lot of people were upset about this. So it's like, if publishing or, promoting, and I think that, again, a recommendation of a video is not necessarily an approval of the video. Do you see what I'm saying? Because if you recommend something, that does not necessarily mean that you think that that thing is good. It's you think that the person could be interested in that thing. So, for example, if you're recommending a video of the Black Plague, it doesn't mean that you are, you want the Black Plague to happen again. Does that make sense? So if you use the logic that a recommendation is a approval of it and a promotion of it, how is Rolling Stone not equally, and in my opinion, if not more, because the algorithm is automated, this is not, this was intentionally done by a human being, how are they not liable for future mass shootings? So yeah, I mean, I find this to be extremely interesting. I don't know, man.
Anti-Terrorism Act, the ATA, by allowing ISIS to post videos on YouTube.
Right.
Under Section 2333 of the ATA, as amended by the Justice Against Sponsors of Terrorism Act, Americans who are injured by, quote, an act of international terrorism that is committed, planned, or authorized by a terrorist organization may sue any person who, quote, aids and abets by knowingly providing substantial assistance or who conspires with a person who committed such an act of international terrorism.
That is, bro, not even by the biggest stretch of the imagination is YouTube aiding and abetting by knowingly providing substantial assistance. Like, these are like three very big words. Knowingly, they had to do it intentionally. Providing, there had to be something actually given. And substantial, which is a qualifier. There is no fucking shot that YouTube did all three of those. There's no way they can get clarified or classified under that. No fucking way. Or conspires with the person. YouTube is not doing that. That'll never happen. The knowingly part would be their escape. Yeah. Rolling Stone had an article explaining their take on the bomber, making them not liable. I don't think that having your take on the bomber would really matter. Because what they're saying is that the recommendations are not contextualized. Yeah, I don't think it would matter.
Damages. So the legal question in the lower courts was whether a social media platform that was not used to commit a specific, quote, act of international terrorism may still be liable for aiding and abetting under
No
Section
way.
2333. The plaintiffs say that the answer is yes, that Google aided and abetted an act of international terrorism, conspired with the perpetrator of...
It's just such bullshit. I mean, like, at that point, are news stations liable whenever they show videos of ISIS or they talk about things like this? Absolutely fucking not. This is a ridiculous stretch. I do think that on the other side, there should be a level of accountability. Because, like, for example, TikTok has gotten a lot of shit for unintentionally having their algorithm promote self-harm videos. So I do think that there is a line for this, but I don't think that what we're seeing now is crossing that line.
Of an act of international terrorism that provided material support to ISIS by allowing ISIS to use YouTube. And of course, the defendants say no. The plaintiff's claims are barred by Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, which often immunizes interactive computer services, aka websites, even when they make targeted recommendations. The trial court and the
Wait a second, let me listen to that again.
By allowing ISIS to use YouTube. And of course, the defendants say no. The plaintiff's claims are barred by Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, which often immunizes interactive computer services, aka websites, even when they make targeted recommendations.
Oh, that's their defense. Oh, that's what they're saying. Okay.
The trial court and the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals sided with Google, ruling that the claims fell within Section 230, Section C, because ISIS, not YouTube, created or developed the relevant...
I would also say that in the theoretical world where YouTube was promoting ISIS videos, like they had a keyword for ISIS that was created bespoke for that algorithm, then I think YouTube would 100% be liable. Like 100%, it's not even a question. But if this was something that was generated and there's no evidence whatsoever that it happened, YouTube was like promoting it intentionally, then no.
The court said
but I do think that opens up another question as to, how are you having this algorithm that you don't understand how it works and there's not enough oversight for it that it's promoting international terrorism? Because at a certain point, like, you go so far down that road and it becomes... not malpractice, but gross negligence.
Quote, selects the particular content provided to a user based on that user's inputs. The display of recommended content results from algorithms that are merely, quote, tools meant to facilitate the communication and content of others, and not content in and of themselves.
And tools that use content that is actually generated, the cookies and the different types of... like the different things that the algorithm uses, the like video recommendations, like what this person likes, that is actually created by the user. Because the user is the one that is creating those recommendations. The algorithm just facilitates it.
As the lower courts noted, the recommendations are based on the user's preferences, not YouTube's.
Yes.
The plaintiffs argue that Section 230C does not apply to, quote, activities that promote or recommend content.
I don't entirely agree with that, though, because on the YouTube homepage, if you open it up as just a random person, there are videos that are promoted by YouTube. Now, let's say these ISIS videos are not one of them. That is true, probably, at least I hope so. But there are videos that are explicitly promoted by YouTube.
So let's dig deeper into what all of this means. First of all, the plaintiffs are not simply arguing that platforms are liable because terrorists have used their services. Yeah. They argue that the powerful algorithms that recommend content are not covered by the CDA because the recommendations are content in and of themselves.
I disagree. Yeah, I think that's complete bullshit.
And as the Ninth Circuit said, the complaint alleges Google uses computer algorithms to match and suggest content to users based upon their viewing history. The Gonzalez plaintiffs allege that in this way, Google has recommended ISIS videos to users and enabled users to locate other videos and accounts related to ISIS, and that by doing so, Google assists ISIS in spreading its message. So
Google has recommended ISIS videos to users and enabled users to locate other videos and accounts related to ISIS. Well, Google did that anywhere. I mean, like, I think that recommended does not mean approved. Recommended just says, hey, this is a topic you're interested in. It doesn't mean that they are approving what is in the video.
Plaintiffs claim that YouTube facilitates communications between ISIS and people
Yeah,
who
it's
watch
another
their
video
videos,
that is
thereby
similar.
aiding ISIS in recruiting new
It
members.
shouldn't happen anyway.
The plaintiffs
True.
acknowledge that YouTube removed ISIS videos and suspended or blocked ISIS users at various times.
Yeah, they do.
However, the plaintiffs claim that YouTube should have been able to stop ISIS from re-establishing accounts using new identities. And
That's so fucking stupid. Absolutely fucking ridiculous. And like anybody would know that if you allow people to make an account without an approval process, you're going to have, it's literally impossible. Yeah, like what do you, you can't do this.
the plaintiffs allege that Google left some of the ISIS videos up because they did not contain content violating the site's policies. At other times, Google removed the offending content, but did not suspend or ban the accounts. Now, we've talked about Section 230 of the CDA many times on this channel. Section 230 was created back in 1996 at the...
Right, 1996. Totally another really great system for us to have, guys, for dominating the internet 20 years later. Or 25 years later. Really, really cool that we're still working off of a rule in 1996.
Dawn of the internet. It has two key provisions. Section 230C1 says, quote, no provider or user of an interactive computer service shall be treated as the publisher or speaker of any information provided by another information content provider.
Okay.
This sentence is often called the 26 words that created the internet. This section stipulates that providing access to third-party content does not make an online provider the publisher or speaker of that content.
No.
Now, the second major part of the law is Section 230C2, the so-called Good Samaritan provision, which states, quote, no provider or user of an interactive computer service shall be held liable on account of any action voluntarily taken in good faith to restrict access to or availability of material that the provider or user considers to be obscene, lewd, lascivious, filthy, excessively violent, harassing, or otherwise objectionable, whether or not such material is constitutionally protected.
Okay.
So this provision gives online platforms broad immunity from liability
They can do whatever they want.
if they moderate content in good faith. This provision was meant to allow websites to police itself without incurring new liability, because it was an issue of knowledge. A website might not know what speech was hosted on that particular website, in which case they wouldn't be liable for it. But if they knew that illegal speech or defamatory speech or some other kind of speech was hosted there, and then took steps to remove it from the website itself, then they actively had knowledge of that particular speech and thus might become liable for hosting it in the future. So,
and do you see what, like, why these companies don't do anything? It's because if they do something, they acknowledge that it happened. It's like a very weird example of this is that what I said about the Starforge logo. If we change the logo, we acknowledge that the logo is a dick. You see? So you're stuck with it.
websites found themselves on the horns of a dilemma until Section 230 of the CDA was passed to allow them to engage in good faith moderation. Because there was generally a knowledge requirement to be liable for things that were hosted on your website. If you had no knowledge of what kind of speech was on your website or platform, then you generally weren't liable for it. But the argument went that if you started to moderate your website, then that was evidence that you knew what was on there, and therefore you became liable for all the stuff that you were trying to remove from your website. This applied to spam, to pornography, to pirated media, to defamation, you name it. So the CDA was enacted in 1996 when the internet was still in its infancy. At the time, companies like America Online, CompuServe, and Prodigy were the portals that allowed people to access the internet. People could share files, exchange messages, and chat with each other in real time. But that posed a dilemma. Who would be liable if a user posted something defamatory or shared something else that was illegal? Would liability go beyond the person that was responsible for the post? Or would the internet companies who hosted the content also be on the hook? And that brings us to...
I think that they could be on... I think it would be fair if they were on the hook if they published it and they promoted it. Like, they knowingly promoted that thing specifically. But not otherwise.
To the distinction between content publishers, distributors, and platforms, which is often completely misunderstood. In the pre-internet age, publishers, distributors, and platforms were treated differently under the law. Publishers were newspapers, magazines, and broadcast stations. They were generally liable for republishing material from third parties since they solicited the things that they published and they could vet those materials. Distributors
so it's like, how are... I don't understand how Google is supposed to be responsible for these ISIS videos, but these news companies that are talking about ISIS and publishing what they're doing and, you know, showing videos of it constantly, how they're not also responsible. Because I can guarantee you there are people that watch, and it's just, I think mass shooters is an even better example. I think that a big reason why we have a lot of mass shooters is because every single time one of them pops off, then every single fucking place goes and they plaster his face everywhere. They talk about everything about him. They fucking read at a granular level his manifesto. They look back at all his videos. Everybody knows his name. And yes, I absolutely think that causes more mass shooters. 100%. So how is this not being applied to these news stations that are talking about it whenever everybody here fucking agrees that it causes more of it? So and again, YouTube is not recommending and giving approval of these videos. They are just simply recommending them. So what that means is that by presenting the information in any form whatsoever, this means that you could potentially be held liable for it under what they're assuming. How are these other news companies not being held liable too? It doesn't make any fucking sense to me. Arguably responsible is like arresting a boutique owner for selling a newspaper that's a racist slur on page 15. I mean, in America, that wouldn't happen anyway. But yeah, it's double standard. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
For businesses like bookstores, newsstands, and libraries, which distributed material that was printed by others. And distributors were not required to assess every book that they sold. For example, in the 1950s, the Supreme Court overturned a Los Angeles ordinance that said, if you have obscene material in your bookstore, you can be held criminally responsible. And in that case, a bookstore owner was